Everyone has an opinion on what is the best drive ever in F1 or other motorsports. Newer fans might say either Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, or Fernando Alonso have driven some of the best racers in modern Grand Prix history. Max's and Lewis's best performances, in my opinion, both came in wet weather conditions, at Silverstone in 2008 and Interlagos in 2016 respectively. Alonso is more well known for doing extremely well in bad cars, such as in Azerbaijan in 2018 when he dragged his car back to the pits after suffering 2 punctures early on and still drove his damaged car to a top 7 finish. Older fans may point to the likes of Senna at Donington in 1993 or Nigel Mansell at Silverstone in 1992. History nerds will go even further back, into the 50s and 60s, to cover one of the many legendary standout names, such as Juan Manuel Fangio, Jim Clark, Graham Hill, or Jackie Stewart. All of those have their own merit, and it's definitely a long-winded and multifaceted debate as to what is the single greatest performance in racing history. You might not even focus on F1 or open-wheel racing entirely, as there are more examples in the likes of endurance racing, NASCAR, or in rallying. Despite the difficulties involved with such a task, in this video I'm going to attempt to explain what I think is in fact the best drive ever. Let me tell you the story of the greatest triumph in racing history.
Juan Manuel Fangio is in the lead on the last lap of the German Grand Prix.
Jim Clark drives the Formula One Motorsport to victory on the racetracks of the world.
And look at that! Colossally, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell! Alain Prost has taken the advantage. Senna is trying to go through on the inside, and it's happened immediately! This is amazing! Senna goes off at the first corner!
And I've got to stop, because I've got a lump in my throat.
Picture this scene. It's 1935. A certain Austrian mustached man has taken a stranglehold on German politics, and he has taken the first step towards starting the Second World War. He'd already broken the Treaty of Versailles, and had said that only those who were part of the Aryan race could join the military. He was in the process of using sports washing to push the idea of German superiority over the rest of the world, and ahead of the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, motor racing was also involved in his ideas. The two main benefactors in pre-war Grand Prix racing from the Central European nation were Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, the latter of which were basically what Audi are today. The NSDAP, which was the Austrian leader's party, bankrolled the efforts of the two main motor racing marques in the country so they could develop the best cars. They also hired the best drivers, and not just ones from their home nation, with the likes of Hans Stuck, Rudolf Caracciola, Bernd Rosemeyer, Manfred von Brautich, Hermann Lang, Luigi Fagioli, and Achille Varzi. Pretty much every single world-class driver had driven for either Merck or Auto Union by this point, with a few exceptions. One of these exceptions was the Italian Tazio Nuvolari. Nuvolari had driven both Alfa Romeos and Maseratis to wins in many races. He'd won the Targa Florio and Mille Miglia twice, the Le Mans 24-hour once, and totaled to 29 major race victories before the start of the 1935 season. He'd actually been approached to join Auto Union, but one of their already established drivers, Achille Varzi, vetoed the signing of his compatriot. Thus, Nuvolari signed on with Scuderia Ferrari, who ran Alfa Romeo's official racing team. Yes, you heard that right. There was a time where Ferrari didn't build their own cars. It wouldn't be until 1939 when Enzo set up a company that would become the modern-day Maranello team. Not getting signed to Auto Union wasn't a good move for Tazio, at least not on a performance front. As I mentioned earlier, the Germans were bankrolling their racing teams to the point where their technology in the cars was far better than anything the Italians, French, or English teams could come up with. For example, their cars were producing upwards of 350 horsepower, while their rivals were struggling to get more than 250, and the Germans understood streamlining far better than anyone else. Thus, Auto Union or Mercedes won not just all of the 3 opening rounds of the European Grand Prix Championship, but also several non-championship race events in Penja-Rin, the Eifelrennen GP at the Nordschleife, along with Avis, and a race at the finish track, Elan Taharata, sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, and the Tripoli Grand Prix in modern-day Libya. The Germans had pretty much wiped the floor with the competition at every opportunity they had in the early part of the season. Then came the German Grand Prix, held on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. 22.81 kilometres, or 14 miles, 174 turns, long straights, fast corners. The track had everything. Entering the race were 5 Mercedes-Benz, 4 Auto Unions, 5 Alfa Romeos, 6 Maseratis, 2 ERAs, and a Bugatti. One of the Alfas, one of the ERAs, and one of the Maseratis failed to start, and thus the race got underway. 300,000 fans lined the circuit, with several high-up officials in the Third Reich also attending, with rumours abound that the Führer himself would turn up. Qualifying wasn't a thing in these days, so ballots were drawn to see who started where. On pole was the Auto Union of Stuck, second was Nuvolari, and third was another Alfa Romeo driven by Renato Balestrero. The silver cars, mostly driven by the home heroes, were dotted amongst the pack. By lap 5 of 22 of the fearsome circuit, all of Nuvolari's Alfa Romeo teammates had retired, so he was flying the lone flag for his constructor. Not only was it raining on track, it was also pouring for the Alfa team because the Mercs and Auto Unions had overtaken him due to their extreme car advantage, and he was down to 5th. Rosemeyer crashed and had to rendezvous back to the pits on lap 6, and Nuvolari passed him before battling with von Brautich from lap 7 until lap 9, where he overtook both MVB and Luigi Fagioli. He was now in second and catching race leader Caracciola, who he overtook on lap 10. Lap 11 saw not just the halfway point of the race, but also the leading quartet come into the pits. Von Brautich was in and out in 47 seconds. Caracciola came out next at 1 minute and 7 seconds, then Rosemeyer was out in 1 minute and 15 seconds. However, Nuvolari stayed in his pit box as the others scampered away. His fuel pump had failed, so instead his team had to primitively pour the fuel into the car directly by the cans. After 2 minutes and 14 seconds stationary, the small Italian jumped back in his car and set off in anger and frustration, having lost that much time. He rejoined in 6th place. Stuck and Fagioli, who hadn't made their stops yet, came in on lap 12, while von Brautich hurled his car around the winding circuit at an average speed of 80 miles an hour, seeing his chance to win come to fruition. Fagioli and Rosemeyer then dropped back due to separate mechanical issues. Then on lap 13, unlucky for some, but not Nuvolari, he navigated his way past Stuck, the ailing Fagioli and Caracciola, which put him in 2nd place. With 9 laps left, he had over a minute's gap to the leader, von Brautich. Nuvolari and Caracciola in 3rd behind were catching the leader. The signal boards hung from the pits every single lap to signify the gap. By lap 18, it was down to 43 seconds. Then von Brautich went faster than his previous fastest lap and rebutted. Lap 20, it was 32 seconds. Then Stuck overtook Caracciola for 3rd as Rudolph was feeling unwell. Perhaps he had a red nose. Von Brautich, who was absolutely caning it to stop Nuvolari's advances, gained 3 seconds on the penultimate lap to extend the gap to 35 seconds going on to the final tour. The German, whose nickname Pechvogel translates as unlucky bird, had been taking a toll on his car by pushing it to the limits, with extreme wear on both the tyres and brakes. 5 kilometres around the last 22-kilometre lap at Flugplatz, the gap was 30 seconds. By Adenauer Forst, it was 27. Then as the two drivers approached the carousel corner, Nuvolari could see his rival in the distance, as the gap had shrunk to 200 yards. The commentators on the loudspeakers were talking excitedly, but that excitement soon turned into incomprehensible babbling. Von Brautich's left rear tyre burst, and he veered from side to side, gathering control again, and kept a steady-ish pace. Then with 5 miles to go, the remaining rubber fibres flew off the wheel rim, leaving the German car and driver pairing completely helpless. Nuvolari stormed past, meanwhile his rival crawled back to the finish line, doing only 40 miles an hour. The little Italian veteran won the race, ahead of Stuck, Caracciola and Rosemeyer. After he had led the race for so long, von Brautich finished 6 minutes down in 5th place. The Third Reich had been proverbially defeated on their home turf. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed, so-called perfect Aryan race had been shown up by a 42-year-old, tiny, asthmatic Italian man on pure skill and judgment, whilst in much worse machinery. However, the story of the embarrassment at home for the regime didn't end there. Due to their sheer confidence, or indeed arrogance, the Germans had only foreseen the outcome of the race to be that one of their home competitors would win. Thus, only the German national anthem was available to be played for the winner. They were clearly in a tricky situation, as there's no way you can play such an anthem when an Italian driver and car pairing won the race. They were saved, however, because after he'd pulled off such an amazing performance, Tazio Nuvolari handed the race officials a record. On that record was a copy of the Italian national anthem, which he always carried with him in the event that no other race officials did. Loudspeakers around the Nordschleife boomed to the sound of the Marcia Reale national anthem, broadcasting to 300,000 dumbfounded spectators who really was the superior race. Another hilarious anecdote to the comedy of errors that were the post-race procedures involved the winner's prize. As was customary in the early eras of racing, a garland or a wreath would be worn around the neck of the winning driver. However, this wreath had been designed for the physically superior Aryan drivers whose height extended beyond 6 feet tall. Nuvolari, on the other hand, was 5'2". As such, he looked like a kid wearing his dad's clothes, completely out of place while wearing this garland. This was an embarrassment to the home nation that hosted the event. This was supposed to be the epicenter of German prowess, at least until the Berlin Olympics came a year later. However, it doesn't really send out the message that your people and your ideals are stronger and better than everyone else if you get beaten by a guy who is far less physically imposing and of a different country. Nuvolari's career after this amazing win would continue until he started suffering from health issues. He often raced with a handkerchief in one hand while driving, as he would be coughing up blood while doing so. He won his last major race at the Mille Miglia in 1947, but competed in his last race, a hill climb event, which he won in 1950. A stroke he suffered in 1952 left him partially paralysed, then he died in 1953 of a second stroke. He was 60. Ferdinand Porsche called him the greatest of the past, present and future, whereas the fact that Varzi vetoed him from joining Auto Union perpetuated the idea that he was simply scared of how good Nuvolari was. Having learned more about his career in the last year or so, he definitely belongs up in the top 10 Grand Prix drivers of all time, and he's in my top 3 along with Jim Clark and Juan Manuel Fangio. He's a true legend who no one talks about nowadays because he came from an era that hardly anyone has survived. It's a shame he's so underrepresented because performances like these prove why sports are so important. Even if, just for a brief moment, he challenged and embarrassed a tyrannical regime that needed to be stopped. I don't know what his political leanings were, as even though Mussolini was pro-NSDAP, I don't know if that stemmed through to the top-level drivers. But if Tazio really was against the Third Reich, we can only assume that he was smiling to the moon and back, having rubbed it in the faces how bad they were. If only he was gay and Jewish, it would have been even more ironic. Anyways, with that being said, I think it's time to end the video. I hope you all enjoyed me talking about the greatest victory in racing history. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more content from me. Also subscribe to my Patreon and follow my Instagram for more behind-the-scenes content, with Patreon subscriptions starting at $1 per month. Big shout out to long-time subscriber Andy Lamberts and a new one in the form of Ayman Al-Duwadi. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Without further ado, I'm Nedzo, and I'll see you all later. Bye!